Paula Gloria, and this show is called Farther Down the Rabbit Hole. On this show, we talk about consciousness, and it's sort of developed into consciousness and politics, because consciousness, we can affect our reality, and what could be more important than what we call the study of politics, which is also the study of power, which is not really outside of the dimension of spiritual study. It's just a different type of spiritual study. One I call the peace of Shiva, or the peace of renunciation, and one is the peace of Shakti, or the peace that you get through opulence, through being able to have the support of abundance of the world's resources. And this has to do with understanding that God comes from nature, the flow of the five elements, balance of the five elements. And by understanding nature, which can oftentimes be violent, we can in a more wise way know that we are products of nature and operate our willpower or our sankalpam accordingly. A lot of people are new to my show that I had on November 30th that had some nice callers, and then I'm going to go on to consider the authority of the Bible, and whether the Bible was written by men or whether it was divinely inspired. And this has to do with understanding the capacity in which we can work. We can work oftentimes influenced by, in artistic circles, it's called the muse. And many artists have written about the muse, which is inspiration that comes from beyond our personality. And in this case, when inspiration comes from beyond the personality, we can say that certain works of art and certain religious texts are divinely inspired. And it even gets into the realm of precipitated art. That's something, it's a topic I think I'd like to hold for another time, because it's so deep, that a lot of the religious objects that are given great reverence to throughout the world in many different religions really were coming from the divine, coming from another dimension. And the importance of considering the miracles is that whoever has command of the miracles is someone that we have the right to question whether they're really linked in, profoundly connected to where sankalpam, or willpower, and the ability to manifest from this profound level of consciousness is there or not. Because if it isn't there, it means that our leaders, both political and religious, are bamboozling us. But if they are tuned in to nature at the most profound level, then they will be able to carry out the sacred responsibility that even a political leader has to his followers. And we can be wise and savvy by understanding who we are. We can be able to tell who's fooling us and who isn't. And so now I'm going to be having a roll-in of a previous show that I had where I had callers, and then I'm going to go on to another roll-in within that about Huldar the priestess. And Huldar was one of the prophets of the Bible, and we can see that perhaps Deuteronomy was not as divinely inspired as the others. And this has always been a problem of the Jewish people. On the one hand, they had the prophets with divine inspiration, and on the other hand, they had the priests who were sort of, maybe in a way, step-down transformers, translating what the meaning of the divinity and the divinely inspired message was, and how the people in their day-to-day life, through sacrifice and religious practice, would maintain this connection. The problem is that when you get priests that are not acting outside of their personality, they're not divinely inspired as the prophets were, but are more inspired from the needs of their personality, so that they want, a lot of sacrificial lambs and whatever else, goats they were sacrificing, to come to the temple so that they would be ensured of their livelihood. On the other hand, the prophets could be so God intoxicated that they wouldn't be that practical. So I'm not saying priests are bad and prophets are the only way to go, but I am saying it's very important to be able to use your own spiritual practice, however that might be, to develop a careful understanding of the difference. So let's go ahead with the show. Anyway, it's worth seeing. So I would say 9:30 on Friday.
Tonight?
What's that?
Tonight?
No, that's 9:30 Friday morning.
Friday morning, okay.
But tomorrow night at 7:30, Alan Steinfeld on New Realities is going to be going live, and he's going to try to bring more information about mediumship because it's misunderstood. And again, mediumship could be like any creative act. When an artist catches the muse, you know,
yes.
they talk about being inspired. That's a type of mediumship.
Yes.
And we all know when we get very egotistical and you go, I can do it all, that's when we sort of restrict and we clamp down. And women tend to be more pliable, more open, more yielding to allow inspiration to come in. And of course, you don't want to have your mind so open that, you know, that your brain drops out. And that's what was so good about the movie, What the Bleep Do We Know?
Yes, that's fantastic.
So,
well, good. Well, I'll watch tonight, tomorrow, and
yeah,
Friday, and maybe try to come for the weekend.
Yeah, that'd be great. So
Okay.
Tomorrow night is channel 56 or 57. It's New Realities at
Okay.
7:30. And then
where is the weekend? Can you say?
I'm not sure. You have to call that number
Okay,
to find
I
out.
see the number.
It's at some church. But anyway, thank you so much for
Thank you
calling.
so much, and thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And stay
It is
tuned.
inspired.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Oh, that's...
Just
Yes, can you hear me?
hello.
Yes.
I just listened to you, and you mentioned that Alan Steinfeld is live.
He's going to be going live tomorrow on Thursday at 7:30.
7:30.
It's either 7 or 7:30 on channel 56 or 57. You have to
56
check
or
that.
57. Great. Thank you very much. You're doing a good job.
Oh, thank you.
I
Thank
have
you.
one more question.
Yes, please.
A couple of weeks ago, you had on 59th Street between 10th and 11th Avenue, What the Bleep screening.
Yes,
What
I
happened?
recognize your voice. You're the Austrian, right?
Yeah.
Right. I don't think you showed up.
You know, I was disappointed because I walked all the way up there, and there was nobody there.
You must have had the address wrong. It was 537, but Joe...
I was there. I talked to the security guy.
But we were back there. We were there
He
for
said
4
there's-
hours.
He said there's nobody here.
Oh, my goodness.
And I made even a phone call in the security booth. He let me in.
Really?
I made 2 phone calls to some of my friends.
Oh, my goodness.
You were in the back?
Yes, we were in the big studio, and I'll tell you, we played the movie,
Yeah.
What the Bleep Do We Know, but afterwards, Joe Friendly, who has the show Truth for a Change, which comes on at 9:30, he and I and Alan Steinfeld got up and we talked a little bit, and then we encouraged people from the audience to get up and to make little statements, and we're collecting those statements, and we're going to give them back to the producer of What the Bleep. And this is a whole nother way we can use public access, where instead of just passively watching movies,
Right.
now we can have a platform where we can come together and collect information that can then go back to the producers so they can hear from us, other than us just going down there and sort of signing or spending our money. You know what I mean?
Is there going to be a repeat?
Well,
Sure,
now that you're calling in, I'm going to try for it. But we're going to also try to have a show on nonviolent communication with
Great.
Marshall Rosenberg, and what else did I want to do? Oh yeah, Harold Channer has a show called Conversations with Harold, and Harold is very inspired by Buckminster Fuller. Do you know Buckminster Fuller?
I heard something about
Well,
it.
Buckminster Fuller was saying that scarcity has been transcended, and we now have the technology that we can share with people. Physically, we can feed everybody and house everybody.
Because the theologians did not like her prophetic message. During the reign of King Josiah, Hilkiah, the high priest, was conducting some renovations in the temple when he found a dusty scroll in the temple's basement. We continue this story reading chapter 22 of the second book of Kings in the New American Standard Bible. Then Hilkiah the high priest said to Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of the Lord. And Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan, who read it. And Shaphan the scribe came to the king and brought back word to the king and said, Your servants have emptied out the money that was found in the house and have delivered it into the hand of the workmen who have the oversight of the house of the Lord. Moreover, Shaphan the scribe told the king, saying, Hilkiah the priest has given me a book. And Shaphan read it in the presence of the king. And it came about, when the king heard the words of the book of the law, that he tore his clothes. Then the king commanded Hilkiah the priest, Achim the son of Shaphan, Achabar the son of Micaiah, Shaphan the scribe, and Asaiah the king's servant, saying, Go inquire of the Lord for me, and the people and all of Judea concerning the words of this book that has been found. For great is the wrath of the Lord that burns against us, because our fathers have not listened to the words of this book, to do according to all that is written concerning us. So Hilkiah the priest, Achim, Akbar, Shaphan, and Asaiah went to Huldar the prophetess, the wife of Shallum, the son of Tikvah, the son of Haras, keeper of the wardrobe. Now she lived in Jerusalem in the second quarter. And they spoke to her. And she said to them, Thus says the Lord God of Israel, Tell the man who sent you to me, Thus says the Lord, Behold, I bring evil on this place and on its inhabitants, even all the words of the book which the king of Judah has read, because they have forsaken me and have burned incense to other gods, that they might provoke me to anger with all the work of their hands. Therefore my wrath burns against this place, and it shall not be quenched. Huldar was declaring that God did not endorse this newly found book. It had been written by the priest who claimed that it was dictated by God. However, Spirit was declaring that this book was a man-made document whose rules would entrench the priest's position as intermediary between God and the people, instead of the prophet or medium.
Thank you, Sidney. Now, I will clarify this for me. The book of Deuteronomy was really written by priests.
Yes,
But priests claimed that it was written by God.
exactly.
And just another clarification, when they talk about Lord throughout all of this, and and many people have seen this throughout all the different versions of the Bible,
Right.
Lord simply means what?
Lord means a spirit person who lives in the spirit world. Some people were under the conception they were talking to the same person all the time, but they really weren't. The Bible makes you think that, but it's really different spirit people that were communicating through these prophets or mediums.
So I can see why they lumped this all together and thought it was just one God.
Yes.
Every time they say Lord.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So now she was, Huldar, prophetess Huldar,
Right.
was considered a medium at that time.
Yes. And basically what she was saying was that this book was fraudulent. It didn't come directly from God. That in fact these spirit people were upset with the book. And of course that priest didn't like hearing that. And this is part of the reason that the priests and the mediums didn't get along, because the priests were claiming they were the ones in communication with the spirit world when they didn't have the gifts of the spirit. It was the prophets and prophetesses that did. What it was that they found this scroll, and when they read the scroll, they discovered that they weren't carrying out what the things that they were supposed to. Supposedly God wanted X, Y, and Z done, and they weren't doing it. So they thought they were in trouble because they weren't pleasing what God wanted, supposedly.
Okay. I guess what I was talking about was more specifically the area about the money in the house, or the
I think that description was talking about the job of that particular person who was involved in the story.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just your basic simple person, and reading the Bible for me had a little bit of a different meaning.
Right.
So it's better to have someone like you translate this properly, who can understand Hebrew, who has read over 200 and some versions of the Bible.
Over 250, yes.
And obviously has traveled and researched all of the facts as well.
Right.
Okay. All right. So that's an example. But we don't hear, I don't hear many ministers or priests in church talk about Huldar.
I actually never heard her name ever mentioned.
I never heard her name mentioned either until I was reading, doing some reading, and all of a sudden this name popped up. I never heard her name mentioned either.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
I was ruling Israel. The Bible hadn't been written down yet. Everything was in oral traditions. Everything was talked about. But very shortly after that, in 581 A.D., the Assyrians came and they conquered Israel, and the Hebrews, and they burned the temple down and they took them to Babylon. And that was called the Babylonian captivity. So they were in a different culture, exposed to different religions, and since they wanted to keep their identity intact, that's when they actually created a synagogue worship service, because before that it was animal sacrifice. And they sat and they wrote down their Bible. And this is why, like if you read Genesis, the story of Adam and Eve, that story is a Sumerian myth of the creation of the world, except it had the Sumerian gods. So the Hebrews needed a place to start, and they basically adopted that story. It follows it exactly, except they changed the name of the god. And but it was a lot of things. There was a big shift in their religion under the Babylonian captivity. The Bible now.
but Deuteronomy, was kept,
Yes.
even though
Yes, it
Miriam
had
told
that.
them that it wasn't authentic.
That's right. It had been, that was one of the scrolls that they did have down, but it wasn't in the Bible yet. It was just a scroll, but yes, they incorporated it into the Bible.
Okay. You started to touch upon other areas where...
Back again, and I just want to tie up what I did. I had one of my previous shows, it was from November 30th, with a caller, kind of talking about a screening that we had with What the Bleep Do We Know. We showed that here at the Public Access Studios on West 59th, and afterwards we took questions from the audience, and it was very successful, and I'm going to edit it and see that you get it here for this morning edition. And then I went on and put a little clip from some people who used to have a public access show, I think in Connecticut, and I became very intrigued with their work when I ran across a book called Crossovers, The Origins of Homosexuality Revealed. And this was down in Miami last summer at a What the Bleep conference. And Father Miho Ledwith is someone that I had worked with for years. I had done some nice interviews with him before I went to India on a very extensive study of the Divine Mother. And interestingly enough, I even had, and I have shown a little bit and I will show more, of an interview with Miho Ledwith and an Indian manifesting Swami. And what's interesting is that Audrey Wolfe, one of the outstanding teachers at the Ramtha School of Enlightenment, which is the spiritual basis for the movie What the Bleep Do We Know, had actually forbidden me when I was in the school doing tough spiritual practices from seeing this Swami who was blowing through town at that point. And her comment is that I will not give you permission to see a manifesting Swami when you could be with Ramtha the Enlightened One. And Ramtha the Enlightened One channels through the body of J.Z. Knight. And the school has a very valuable point which says that only by doing tough spiritual practice will you uncover your own God within, and that to rely on other masters is actually just to sort of give you this sort of spiritual high or spiritual hit, because they do have great influence, but they can weaken you by not understanding your own God within. So I respect that this was done. In any case, after coming back from India at this conference and reconnecting with Miho Ledwith, I ran across Sidney Schwartz, who was a biblical scholar, and he had used many different translations of the Bible to go meticulously into certain points. And like there's one show I have where you could actually see the Hebrew word for medium, and you could see the Hebrew word for witch, and they were different words. But you can see this misunderstanding of the difference between a prophet and a priest. When people get into power and they sort of puff up their personalities about how important they are, they can run the risk of really being out of touch with the delicate flow of nature, the 5 elements, earth, air, fire, and water, from which we all come from. And this is the point, that God is within everything and everyone, not only in all the religions, but in every single human being. There is that connection with nature, with the five elements, and this should be respected. And when it's not acknowledged, at least, let alone respected, this lack of acknowledgement means that those in power run the risk of sort of being cut off from the fullness of what life could be all about. And I say, using principles of nonviolent communication, which is not authority-based communication, but using power with instead of power over, you can see that even those who have the power and can give decrees and make orders, they are getting their will in their way because of their authority. They're pushing other people around. Wouldn't it be far better that their will and their way would happen because the people understand what they want done? It's called a connection of empathy. And these are skills that we can develop in our own personal life. In our own personal life, we can learn connections of empathy. And that means that somebody is doing what we're requesting of them, not because they're afraid of reward or afraid of punishment from us, or are greedily looking for a reward from us, but because they empathize with us and they know that that's why we want it to be done. They understand, they empathize, they know why we want to do it. They go, yeah, you know, that makes sense. I think I want to go that way too. And when society and politics can be organized around those principles, those politics will be far more successful. And so I'm not saying in this show that the Bible's not good, that it's written by men. I am saying that we have to understand miracles very deeply and very carefully. Otherwise, we're going to be giving our love and our focus in directions that's not going to increase our capacity to give more focus and more love. And that's important. So if you want more information, you can contact me at the Concordia Foundation, and I'll be glad to share with you more that I know as I uncover it. So another thing I want to call to your attention is the importance of public access television. Without public access television, we can't have such an extraordinary platform from which we can exchange ideas. And it just can't be emphasized enough how important in a democracy it is to share ideas, and how important it is to create space for all ideas. Because each one of us, if each one of us is God, or if we're God within, then that divinity that lies within is outside of us, and each individual, no matter what their tradition, their culture, their understanding, particularly the religious tradition, might be to bring about that understanding, we still need the input of everyone to make our beautiful quilt, to make something of value that can hold water, make our beautiful quilt, to make something of value that can hold water under all of the different viewpoints, because that will be the greatest and the most glorious creation. And public access TV allows that to happen, because in this way we can do more than just passively listen to things, but we can hone our skills to develop our ability to participate. And as we share our ideas, when we go deeply into ourselves to know what our ideas are that we want to share, we'll find that that same skill that we use, whatever, if it's a meditation practice, if it's a chanting practice, devotional singing, going to church, lighting candles for those who need it, the practice itself that allows us to tune into ourself will allow us to appreciate how important it is to hear from everyone, and that who we are is, it's that we're one with everyone. And we, the people, even if we think we're simple and we're without power, we have something very great to offer the most powerful religious or political leader, and that is the ability to connect. Wouldn't any powerful religious, spiritual, or political leader like to know that his desire is being done because the people want it? The people are happy to do it. The people have a connection of empathy. And so in order to do that, we have to throw open our hearts and indicate that we will be available no matter what mischief may have been done in the past. The past is the past, and we can change that past into a better future. So as we change our past into a better future, it's that we want more abundance, and for those who seem to have abundance greater than us, we want those to know that they can have something even more important than money and abundance, and that is connection. And that these connections of empathy can be made. We're willing and available to have them made. We don't care who, for example, blew up the World Trade Center, how that happened. We think it's very important that that story come forward. We think it's important that an impeachment process take place, because an impeachment process is something that's a constitutional right. It's written into our laws of government. It's totally patriotic. And it's just saying, you know, I think this job is a little bit too much for you. You need to have a red step down. I come from the impeachment point not by saying that it's a punishment thing, because I believe punishment never, ever works. Punishment, scolding and shaming someone is not going to create more connections of empathy. It's not going to create a healthier society, and it's not a healthy process, because we don't take responsibility ourselves and understand our own divinity within. But we must develop the ability to connect more with our divinity. So
you have to understand one very important thing. The basis for the Israeli operations against Hamas in the occupied territories, the basis for the Israeli attacks on Lebanon and the tremendous humanitarian atrocities that are going on there, the basis for the U.S. support of this, the basis for the war in Iraq, the basis for the coming attack on Syria and Iran, all boils down to one thing: the 9/11 myth, the racist warmongering myth, spread without proof by the Bush administration that somehow Arabs and Muslims carried out 9/11. The truth, of course, is that the 9/11 attacks were a war provocation coming from the bowels of the CIA, the Pentagon, the NSA, the NSC, and so forth. So the peace movement has got to take up the cause of 9/11 truth. Otherwise, these wars will go on for the foreseeable future. The only way to get peace is through a strong policy of 9/11 truth.